We're going to now move on to, this is National Sickle Cell Anemia Month. And we are so honored to have with us Yvonne Smith, who is a sickle cell warrior. And, welcome to WIN TV, Yvonne.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So when we say warrior, what does that mean in your mind? I mean, what has your journey been like as far as being having sickle cell?
Okay, so a warrior is a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you talked about the woman king at the beginning of this series, and that would be a perfect depiction of the sickle cell community. We are people who live with a blood disorder, a genetic blood disorder. So it's not something that's contagious. You're born with it or you're not. And anyone who wants to go back and research the evolution of sickle cell, a great video is on YouTube. Google sickle cell malaria evolution. And it talks about how in tropical continents that were more prevalent for malaria, over time, the body evolved to fight malaria. And so sickle cell derived from the body's evolution of fighting malaria. And so what happened to have the sickle cell trait, your body naturally fought off malaria. Two people together, can you hear me?
Yeah, Shevry and I are trying to get the name of that um, uh,
The
the
YouTube
video that
video.
you talked about.
Oh,
Sickle cell malaria.
yes. If you just go to youtube.com and type in sickle cell malaria, you'll see the video. And it talks about the evolution of how malaria, developing that genotype that helped you fight malaria was good. But how sickle cell came about, the genotype, when one person with the genotype made it with another person with the genotype, and the baby had a higher chance of developing sickle cell anemia. So it wasn't until about 1902 that sickle cell was even discovered in this country. And today, about 100,000 people live with sickle cell anemia, and about a little under 10,000 just in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area alone. And it's a painful genetic blood disorder. You can live a normal life, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you're hit with something called a sickle cell crisis. That's when your red blood cells, which are abnormally shaped in the first place. The word sickle comes from the sickle shape, like a banana shaped red blood cell instead of a red round blood cell. It's more of a sickle shape. And so it doesn't flow through the vessels like it should, and causes clots and what we call a traffic jam of blood cells, which would cause a painful episode that can last anywhere from hours to a couple of weeks. And so the way we address a sickle cell crisis is through hospitalization. It's one of the number one reasons why people are hospitalized around this country. And one of the number one reasons why you see people in pain and hospitals and emergency rooms. So we get there and we get pain medicine and oxygen and IV fluids until we're able to restore our red blood cells.
Let me ask you really quickly though, when were you first diagnosed with sickle cell disease?
Okay, so I'm 53 years old, and back in 1969, babies weren't being tested like they are now for sickle cell. So it wasn't until college that I fully knew what this painful, bone-breaking episode was about.
And was that through testing at your university, at home, or was it just, how did that happen?
Testing at the local sickle cell center.
Okay.
And at Howard University, as you know, has a sickle cell center. In fact, the president of Howard University is a sickle cell warrior.
Yes. Yeah.
And um,
I asked that question because when I went to Howard, in my transferred to Howard, and Howard required, what do you call it? A physical, right?
mhm.
And that's when they told me I had the trait.
Oh, wow.
No one had ever told me that before.
Oh,
And
wow.
I thought Howard was so much ahead of itself by making sure that they even tested for
Mhm,
sickle cell.
mhm.
No one in my family wanted to claim that they had passed the trait on to me until they got tested.
Oh, yeah.
And we found out where what side of my mother and my father where it came from. So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because there are some advances that have been made. It just seems as though it's been so long, and for people like yourself to still have to go through these painful experiences, and there is no cure.
There's no
So
there's no universal cure. You can
okay,
find your bone marrow match and then try to get the stem cell surgery, but sometimes it takes, sometimes it doesn't. I've known a couple of people who went through the surgery and it did not actually cure their sickle cell. So we're still looking for a universal cure. It's always good though to see commercial. There's one out right now for a new drug called Oxbryta, and it's always good to see these. If we're gonna be flooded like we are with pharmaceutical commercials, then it's good to see one that addresses sickle cell anemia. So Oxbryta is the newest one that is making its round, and doctors are recommending it. And so about every 2-3 years, we hear about a new development and a new drug that's out here to help fight. And we're just, for now, just supporting each other online through.
that's what I was going to ask you. How are the warriors fighting? What's going on?
We
So
have
online, uh-huh.
we have wonderful online sickle cell support groups where we come together and talk about our shared experiences. People are asking about what's a good doctor in Chicago, what's a good doctor in Atlanta. People are sharing stories about drugs that they've received and wanting to know what were the side effects for you. And um, there are lots of stories about successful people who have gone on in their careers to do wonderful things with sickle cell. So we look to highlight that in our support group so that it's not all about our illness, it's about what we can do as we await a cure. And I would like to recognize and acknowledge some of the people who have passed along: Tierra Durham, my sister Wendy, um, my cousin Yvonne, who have worked towards empowering sickle cell patients. And my sister actually did studies with Emory University's medical school to help teach doctors in training about the care and
Mhm.
compassion for sickle cell. My Tammy, who's out here, developed. She's an architect with sickle cell who is actually designing hospital rooms and talking to physicians about the importance of incorporating the family into the care when sickle cell patients are hospitalized. You know, it was terrible during COVID when
I can imagine.
you
Mhm.
admitted and couldn't have your own family at your bedside.
Mhm. So, I mean, this month, I mean, fortunately, this is the time of the year that sickle cell anemia is highlighted. It just doesn't seem to get the recognition that so many other diseases have that if not, maybe not even as common among the Black community as sickle cell is. So, what do you think people ought to do during this month in particular to help to raise
Awareness.
awareness, and also to push for the things that the medical attention that this disease needs?
We have great organizations like the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America, the Sickle Cell Consortium down in Georgia. They do wonderful conferences and give us an opportunity to write letters to the Centers for Disease Control, members of Congress, even the Joint Commission. And, you know, the Joint Commission supervises hospital care around the country. We even had a campaign, not so successful yet, but we're still working on it, to get Sidney Poitier's movie A Warm December brought back to either Oprah Winfrey's network, or we saw it on I believe it was the movie Turner Classic Movies.
Okay.
It was nothing like when you're going through something, seeing it portrayed on television.
Wow.
You know, Dr. Maya Angelou talked about back in the day when they would see a Black person on TV. It's a Black person on TV.
Oh yeah. We haven't passed that point.
When
Yeah.
we see movies about, there's a beautiful love story that Sidney Poitier did back in the early 1970s to show and portray sickle cell anemia in such a beautiful way. And we have started a campaign to get that movie back on the air, because so many sickle cell patients on our support groups want to see that movie.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for letting us see and hear you. And, just our prayers are with you, having become a sickle cell warrior. Evidently, you're continuing to fight the fight, and we want you to continue to fight the fight. So I want to just, again, thank you for being with us today.
And I want to thank my husband, David, and Jasmine, my daughter, my stepchildren and grandchildren, because we are a support group for each other, and they take great care of me when I'm sick.
Wonderful. That's good news. That's
Thank
good
you
news.
for having me.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
You too.
Okie doke.
Where do you come to get